Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. And of course, we're having a heck of a time there already, right out of the gate. Here we go. Hey everybody, it's Medium Brandon Ross. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know I've got a lot of new viewers. I got a lot of new subscribers. Thanks so much for coming on board. Many of you had found me before, and many more of you will find me here moving forward. I think that's a pretty fantastic thing. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming along in this path. I also want to thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. You don't realize how much that really kind of goes a long way. Hey, Paula. Hi, Jess. Hey, Vicky. How are you? I'm so glad that you found me here. I also want to let you know. Hi, Haiti. How are you? I know, out in California. Um, just a quick reminder. I have a Science from Loved One class tonight. And that is, it is free. It is free. Oh my gosh, I'm freezing again. What is up with this? I don't get why this is freezing. Oh, I don't know. Maybe because it wants to make sure that I can't get the message out cleanly. Distractors, all that other good stuff. Okay, that's kind of fun. So thank you. Our message yesterday. Hello, Julie. How are you from Arizona? Is it a dry heat or is it more of a take the heat until you can? My gosh. So the cool part about where we're at today is we can start to kind of build a process, right? And just like I kind of said in the messaging of it, it's like, what do we do now? Right? Like, how do we start to kind of build rapport with ourselves so that then so then we can build a strategy so that then we're not triggered, so then we're not angry, so then we're not like, oh, I remember November the 5th or whatever the case may be. It's a different feel, right? It's a different feel for whatever reason. And again, this isn't being critical about Trump people. It's how to manage things that are presented to you. And even still, I really thought a little bit about how to frame it, right? And how to go down a path that would allow us to be fantastic, because that would be a pretty fantastic way for us to really kind of acknowledge that there are things in the world that make us uncomfortable. The only thing that we can do from this point forward is to grow. It'll be an opportunity for us to grow, right? And with that idea, there's a lot of light workers on here. And if you're not a direct light worker, if you're not doing mediumship or angel work or Reiki or whatever your modality is, you still resonate with a level of being a problem solver for energetic problems, right? And by the way, my hair is out of control. Apparently I need a hairdresser. Don't volunteer. I'm good. I just need to get it tamed. You are going to get stronger mentally and physically. But the only way that you can really kind of learn what your triggers are to challenge them, right? And to see them and everything else. Yeah, it's a weird humidity here in New York right now. And the idea for me is really about being able to get there, right? So let's kind of take a look at what you see in this stuff. And by the way, I've gotten plenty of messages about how incorrect I've been in my readings and my predictions. In this global stuff, I can't seem to get it right. I called Kamala. And let's have a full admission here. My video yesterday was kind of making myself feel better to be like, there's a lot of misrest. There's a lot of other people kind of going like this. Like I had to externalize it too. But we also need to, recognize that we need to be able to have the idea that we're not going to be in a position where we have to be compromised, because we're starting to realize that trigger is what they go for. And what that trigger is, let's talk about this for a second, because then we'll get somewhere. That trigger is exactly what they're doing. That's exactly why they voted for him. maybe in the grand scheme of things, they could look past all of his felonies. And by the way, that's the stuff that most sane people are looking at. Most people that actually love this country look at his abominations against the Constitution in security, and his opinions about. I mean, I'm perfectly okay with Donald Trump being in this country. I have a problem with him being in charge, right? And that's kind of what I think the lion's share of what most people are talking about. Like, there's just going to be people in this world that just have a different opinion, and I'm not walking anything back. I'm still telling it like it is, right? But take a look at yourself. What you are doing with your anger is exactly what they want you to do. And then they want you to quit, and then they want you to leave the country. Because if you leave the country, it just makes it easier for them. And listen, even if you're in a demographic that identifies with them, you're in a vibration that doesn't identify with them. They would love for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy to pick up and take off, because then that would just be one less guy that's working against them. And it's not about working against them. We talk about, I'm not against them. Let's create a couple of primers here. It is not an us versus them. Let's get that out of our head. It is not a Kamala versus Trump. It was on election day. It is no longer. And by the way, I'm thoroughly disappointed that you have Kamala and Joe Biden basically saying, hey, you got to accept the results. There are some blatant things that, I mean, take it or leave it, like it or not. I was fully, and I do mean fully, behind Donald Trump challenging the election. Genuinely. Because I wanted to see how free and fair is this. This was an opportunity for us to get whatever process we had in place right. 180 lawsuits. There was only one return of one anomaly of something that they found, and it went in Joe Biden's favor. There were 3 ballots that were counted as counted, but were not. And then they went back and they found those 3 ballots, which is why many states adopted the provisional vote. So if you voted by mail and you didn't have it and you said, oh, I need to get down there and make sure that my vote counts. I don't know what's happened to it yet, but we haven't counted it as a result yet. So I'm going to provisionally put this in, and then they're going to check it, which, by the way, is our system evolving? Is that a positive? Sure is. By the way, that is not Democrat. That is not Republican. They both have the same opportunity, in theory, to be able to say to them, hey, here you go. Here's my provisional ballot. Go ahead and put it up against whatever it is that you need it to be. Right? And then you say, oh, we did already count this, tear up the provisional thing. Totally okay with that. And then, but don't report, oh my God, there were 10,000 provisional ballots that were destroyed. Well, yeah, they were destroyed because they were accounted for. Well, who did the accounting? Oh God, here we go again. We have 3 different people do it. It gets counted 3 different times. We have to, this person says, see this, we have to count this. Okay, put it in the count pile. I'll check it. Okay, see this needs to be counted. Okay, see this needs to be destroyed. Second pile. There's processes for everything, guys. Like it's process management, right? I'm not angry that he challenged the election in 2020. I'm disappointed that there isn't at least an inquiry, that there isn't at least we think that it's so overwhelming. That's kind of the point, right? So I'm seeing some of your comments now, and I'm going to say it out loud. How do you stay in love and light? How do you stay in love and light? It's a tough thing, isn't it? Because there will be somebody, and by the way, think about your path as a light worker. So sorry, I'm going to turn that down. Think about your life as a light worker. Wherever it is that you are in your cycle, right? Maybe you're new at this. Maybe you had an epiphany or a life change a couple of years ago and you worked with it. Great. Then you say to yourself, I'm going to bite the bullet, and any disposable income that I've had, I'm going to pour this into it. And I'm going to drive the car a little bit longer. I'm not going to go out to eat anymore. I'm going to do these things. And and it becomes a conversation. I'm liking some of your answers. I'm gonna pull them up when I start talking about it a little bit further. But you've gone through some sort of process. Maybe you're further along. I've been at this for almost 15 years, right? Where I started out doing this. And by the way, let me introduce myself again. Let me tell you a little bit more about my story, since we have so many, almost 3,000 new subscribers. And by the way, don't forget to click like and subscribe. The beauty of this is that you found your calling, right? So you've gone through a lot of the conversations that you've needed to have with yourself about what you need to act upon, what's important to you, what do you need to connect with, right? This is a conversation for you to say, like, what am I made of? Is this worth it? And some of you wanted to quit and be like, I'll never do Reiki with people. And I talked about people that were outwardly mean to me, that I kind of had like a little bit of a list. I'm like, am I starting to act like them by having a list? And the truism here, and I'm so sorry that this is, I'm going to drop one of the channels and see if this gets better. And just say this. I think it's trying to push out to too many spaces here. Hope I don't lose you guys. If I do, I'll sign right back on. But we just have this very kind of deep-seated passion to do this work, whatever this work is. Let's just say you're a new tarot reader. You took a tarot class 5-6 years ago. You worked it on your own. You started to build in philosophies. Your friends were coming to you. You're getting practice on the weekends. You were starting to kind of like go through the process of, hey, Dad, how are you? Instant smile. And then you begin to kind of like, you're like, hey, I've got something here. Hey, I'm supposed to share something. And then you take that step and you put yourself out there a little bit and you start to kind of like, really kind of grow who you are, right? Well, the dynamic to that is, you think about the strength that you needed to get there. You needed to do your own work. You need to do your own healing. You need to take your own responsibility. You needed to say, some people are going to make fun of me. There is absolutely nothing different from what you went through there in becoming, as well as where you're at now. Let's just take that with a grain of salt, right? Kathy, how are you? Miss Cat, I see you. Jay Powers, Opie, good to see you. Mermaid, yes, as always. Peter, thanks so much. Yeah, sometimes the numerology is there. And by the way, if you like the numerology part of it, I actually have a whole section in tonight's free class, Signs from Loved Ones. You can still sign on. Zoom is going to cap me. I'm getting close to my cap with that. So if you're going to sign up soon. And I'll take the people that have signed up first. Kelly, yeah, 20 million visiting votes seems like a lot, doesn't it? And if it's like, stop the count because we know we're going to be humiliated, I guess, but I don't really buy it. So anyways, you're going through your path, right? You're deciding the ideas that you're going to put yourself out there. And by the way, I've met many gifted people that never make this jump. And I don't care if you work in an antique shop on Saturday that wants a card reader. I don't care if you're doing, Reiki work, but you find that friends and family really need to, work with us. And therefore you're like, maybe that's why I took this. Maybe that's why I'm doing this work. Right. And you help them in a microcosm. You help them grow. You help them be whoever it is that they're supposed to be. Right. Well, that took courage. And let's just note for a second that takes a level of courage that you didn't for a moment hesitate. No, look at that. People are laughing at me. That's my favorite. Maybe they're just laughing at my jokes. I am funny. And now you're faced with a difficult client. And by the way, somewhere in your stuff, I hope that you have found that you have a connection with people, that you have a certain archetype that you begin to work with. Again, there's that word archetype. And for me, I am always working with nurses, teachers, counselors, therapists. Let's not forget, hairdressers. Hairdressers, your classic therapist. They're also sitting in the third eye when they're working on your hair. Yeah, I didn't think you were laughing. And I know that there's a prototype. And by the way, I know a lot of teachers that voted for Trump. And then we get hung up on the societal thing. Well, they have their own personal reasons for whatever reasons. And we know what they are. The reason why people voted for Trump, one, they're disenfranchised with the idea that somebody could be turned into a criminal because they did something wrong. Like there was no mercy on him when the DOJ went after him. Right. Then there was the conversation about, gosh, that this is turning communism and our schools are suffering and we're not getting the help that we need. I mean, there's a lot of things, right? There's a lot of reasons why people voted for Trump. Let's acknowledge that. Because if you don't at least look at the other side of it, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. If you're only part of the reason why everybody thought it would be a landslide towards Kamala was because we thought that our world, our bubble was what was everybody. I just polled 10 people that I work with, and whether they truly believed in it or they wanted to stay together with the pack, they were very much in that mindset to be like, yeah, no, we have to vote for her. Keep that in mind. We are a social creature. We are not truth seeking. Because if you could convince them to vote for Kamala, that means they didn't do any research. That means that they didn't go anywhere with them. So again, you're going to divide up these people that are Trump supporters that are working with a paradigm that they're following, right? Even if at some point they shut out the idea that he was indicted or he had hurt people or whatever it is, they were able to check that off in their brain. Step one when working with somebody in this position is that their thought process has an off switch, right? And by the way, yours does too, but where is it? Right? Your off switch is when you're said, I'm just going to close my eyes. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to have a 3-way with Ben and Jerry. Like, we all have different coping techniques, don't we? Right? So as you kind of work towards this, right? There's a problem with how they kind of went down this path. They shut out the idea that an immigration reform act that they're talking about would be cruel and circumventing our own laws, by the way. But when has that ever stopped them? When has a good law in place ever stopped Donald Trump or his ideas? Oh, by the way, Donald Trump just admitted Project 2025 is the plan. We have concepts of a plan. Meanwhile, we're sitting over here going, duh. I guarantee you, in your feed in the next 7 days, you will see people say he distanced himself from 2025 and now he's saying he's in 2025. If I knew that, and you're going to go like, I'm sorry, what? You didn't see that writing on the wall? You didn't see that disrespect from day one? You didn't see the virtue signaling by having a comedian make cruel jokes about minorities? But instead of finding a solution, it was easier just to say they're garbage. I don't think it is over yet. And as a matter of fact, I think there's some pretty savvy people, humans, Americans, that are doing some research right now. I think there are going to be some rogue units that say, we, on behalf of the people of the Republic of America, have decided to subpoena all of the voter results in these counties. Right? But understand what I'm talking to you guys about today. This is the coping mechanism. This is the strategy. You know why they won? They won because they out-strategized you. They won because there is that there is a strategy in place from start to finish. And the Democrats were like, oh, they're so unconventional. Oh, they're so whatever. Donald Trump went on every podcast and wrangled up the base. And the Democrats just kind of thumbed their nose. She went on SNL. SNL was, everybody that saw that live, virtually all of them were going to vote for her anyways. And the people that weren't going to vote for her weren't going to vote for her. She didn't swing a vote. She didn't swing a single vote. But she went on, but when Donald Trump went on the Joe Rogan show, and by the way, Joe Rogan was very smart by inviting her, right? She went on call, or he went on that podcast, and he stood up his however many followers at a rally and was 3.5 hours late. And we're like, that's so rude. And meanwhile, he's like, there's 15,000 people there. And by the way, I know he's ridiculous, but while he was acting like the fool gets the spotlight, guys. The fool got the spotlight. So just building in the archetype of what you see here. These are going to be people that are going to be like, I like shiny things. And then when they eventually shine the light on it, they're going to be disappointed. They will be. It's going to happen. Also, shining the light on where things are at on the Democrat side, we're also looking at it going, how did we miss this? How did you guys miss this? You guys were supposed to be the professionals. You guys were supposed to be in charge of this. You guys were supposed to really kind of rock it out. So yeah, we're going to call, we're going to raise our hand and say, this doesn't feel well, right? But now let's get granular. Now let's get down to the point of, you're going to find a real challenge in your work now. By the way, I don't care what line of work, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was busy getting celebrity endorsements while he was talking on the Joe Rogan program, actually talking to voters, right? And listen, the Taylor Swift effect. And by the way, when you start running the numbers, the math doesn't math. I've seen that phrase a couple of times, both in my notes and wherever, but the math isn't mathing correctly. Can we maybe look into this? I mean, we did for him, I mean, maybe he should, maybe she should. And by the way, I'm going to be an absolute crazy man right here. Ready? Here's the crazy bite that the left needs, or that the right really needs from me. I think Joe Biden should declare himself the winner and shut down Congress and basically dismiss the three branches of government, because it is completely unenforceable because the president is above the law. I think he should install a 3-person cabinet as the president. I think Kamala would be a good leader. I think Tim Walz has potential. And I think Liz Cheney would be a hell of a balanced ticket. Put the 3 of them in charge. And then you can say, well, technically, you guys voted for a Republican and I still put a Republican in. He is unfit. And I hereby decree as president, anyone that's been convicted of a felony. Oh, well, that wasn't a rule before the election. Oh, are you upset that we moved the goalposts? Moving the goalposts was actually their entire strategy. I'm pretty sure Liz Cheney would take the gig. I'm pretty sure. And she is an incumbent Republican. She lost her seat, but she's still registered. And we're going to pluck her in a triumvirate 3-headed monster called the El Presidente. Someday it will be held by Hector Camacho. Idiocracy is real, guys. But we're literally all sitting here going, how did any of this happen that we have to have the final say of humans that get tricked easily and are a social creature, not a truth-seeking creature, and we go down that path? Granular strategy 101. Know what you're dealing with, right? So we know what we're dealing with. We know that we're dealing with people that have their own process just like us. We're actually a lot more similar than we're not. We deviate when it comes to where their shutoff is. I actually think their shutoff is what we see as hate. They see as, oh, I don't pay attention to that. I don't pay attention to the fact that his wife died suspiciously and she's buried on the 16th green. We don't shut off the thing of he assaulted E. Jean Carroll, then insulted her, right? And then we say, well, look at what he's surrounded by. Other people that wanted to kind of overthrow the government. He's an insurrectionist. He's an insurrectionist. The fact that he was even part of any of this, and the fact that he wouldn't morally shut it down is all that's my standard, right? The fact that he was okay with Mike Pence being hung and being okay if the magnetrons were shut off in case people wanted to bring guns in. It's not about his safety. He doesn't care. They're not here to hurt me. They're here to hurt them. Screw them. I'm your protector. No, you're not. And by the way, everybody has their moment too where they lose out, where they're lost, right? Where they're genuinely lost with Trump. And here's where it was for me. I wasn't lost when he got elected. I was disappointed, but I was genuinely critical of the idea that Hillary Clinton didn't run a good campaign. It did not sit well with me that she absolutely usurped Bernie Sanders. We didn't have a free and fair election for Hillary. Hillary circumvented the vote. Here's some truths. This is like stepping on a rake. Oh. Hillary changed the system first. And then Trump turns around and says, you do the same thing. She did. She did. Bernie Sanders was collecting votes at a rapid pace during the primaries. Was he winning them? Not quite. But he was enough of a thorn in the side. And then Hillary's like, I'm tired. Can you just go away? No, Hillary, I need to keep going. You need to be held accountable. And then she went, hold my broom. Let's go do this. I couldn't see somebody in the 2016 election. It was about the idea that somebody was so woefully underqualified in Trump. And by underqualified, I mean no civic record, no potential of civic record, and a horrible track record on his business side of it. Well, why is he winning? Why did he win? Well, because he appealed to the people that looked at Hillary Clinton and said, ugh. In other words, we have to start raising our game. 2016, he won fair and square. I mean, was Russia collusion involved? Were they advertising? Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, they doubled down when he lost in 2020, right? And what we're seeing out of this is a lot of privilege. You can call it white privilege. I'm just going to call it American privilege from here on in, because we need to start losing the virtue signaling of our races, of our genders, of our whatever. When I look at the most qualified when I looked at Hillary Clinton and Trump, I said, she's more qualified. Hillary is more qualified. Did I appreciate her politics? Hardly. Did I think she was going to do a good job? I think she was going to grift for 4 years, but what are you going to do? Right? In 2020, I said, aha, here's Joe Biden. Is he past his prime? Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Is he a career politician? Sure. Is he going to hurt the country? No. Does he have some modicum of understanding how to do this and be able to reach across the aisle and start to handshake people and say, What do we need to do to get you into this bill today? Yeah. And then Trump revealed himself with the crybaby attitude, the insurrectionist stuff. I mean, the guy's political career should have been over 10,000 times. 10,000 paper cuts. Right? It's funny, libertarians show up. Good for you. And then into 2024, I was like, Kamala's got some flaws, but she's always had leadership roles. She was a district attorney of a large U.S. city. She was the attorney general. She was second in charge of the 6th largest economy in the world. Like, those are qualifications, guys. You might not, and again, I didn't like all of her policies. I didn't like all of Tim Walz's policies. The fact that he had people calling neighbors because you weren't wearing a mask on your front lawn, that was a bit much. That was a touch much, Minnesota, right? But I'll tell you, I've got democracy is not a spectator sport. It's got the state of Minnesota right there. I got this at the Democrat tent. Oh, and by the way, I did stop at the Republican tent, and it was a bunch of people sitting in the back drinking whiskey and smoking cigars, just to let you know. And then I also stopped at the Independent tent as well. A little bit smaller. They appreciated the sentiment towards Harris and Walz and that sort of thing. But I also saw a really disturbing thing. They actually had a Never Walz tent. And listen, I'm all about the idea that maybe, just maybe, that we could treat each other with kindness and say, I just don't think you're a good politician. I'm not going to vote for you. But instead, we have to shit shame people. It's a thing. It's a thing. Because not only do I say, oh my gosh, and by the way, we get caught up in it too. We really do. Are we late workers after we shit shame somebody? It's kind of a thing, right? But what I couldn't understand is why somebody that was a U.S. senator that was kind of an all-around good guy. The thing I liked most about Walz was that he admitted mistakes. He was like, yeah, that didn't go well for me. Yeah, that wasn't a good look. I was over my skis with that. I made personal mistakes. When he talks about the transition, about how he met his wife and the mistakes that he made, he's like, if there was one thing I could go back, I would have had different conversations at different times. As a guy in the middle of it, I'm here to tell you, like, okay, I got it. Right? But then you get smart one day and you have those conversations and you say those things that you need to say. And then everybody says, well, I just want you to be happy. And then all of a sudden you release that burden, because that's what grownups do. They're going to be sad. They're going to be upset. They're going to be whatever. But once you find that truth, then you're there. And that's the part that the Trump archetype is stuck on. They don't want the truth. They just want their own answers. Here we go, everybody. If you formulate your truth in a vacuum, you will only get what you put into it. This is a conversation about your truth. I've worked with people of all walks of life. I've worked with recovering alcoholics, addicts, single moms that had to leave in the middle of the night, fathers that lost their kids to a custody battle that they never had a chance in. I've worked with people that have, forget about all of the protective classes, but throw those in there, I guess, just for your own comprehension. I'm not too worried about whether or not how many people of Indian descent I've worked with, but I have put it out there. I'm like, culturally, I got to be on my toes here, because I may see symbolisms that don't make sense to them. So I had to grow as a medium when I really kind of expanded, right? And all of these things, I think, are very much personal growth items, right? If you are upset about Kamala Harris losing, and start again. If you are upset that Kamala Harris lost the election, you need to make a checklist of your emotional IQ and your inventory to decide what you're upset about. And by the way, that is how you're going to articulate it too. I am not happy because they because a convicted felon was able to run and then was elected. You're also going to be able to say things like, he specifically hurt people and was never held accountable. You're going to be able to talk about those things. You're going to need this later on, right? It's not just because he's repugnant. Stop. Quit with the insults. Be specific. Because your guides are going to be specific when you're working with them. You get this? So if you're working with somebody and you just use generalities, they're going to say to you in no uncertain terms, yeah, it was an okay session, but it was like whatever. Yeah, you kind of wave your hands over me, blah, blah, blah. But if you start being specific with your own emotional IQ, there is a direct translation to how specific you will be in that person's healing. Right? So that will also allow them to be able to bring them to a place where they can start to do that work. Right? What is the biggest criticism that you hear? Oh, she was communist. I don't want to live in a socialist country. What does that mean? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to use an example of how they don't even see their brashness. Are you ready? Here we go. I do listen from time to time. I will listen to conservative talk radio. Now, not for long. I'm not doing the, 20-mile mark listening to, Rush neophytes. But what I will do is I'll listen for the 5 or 10 minutes, between here and there. And I was listening last night, and this person was full of joy. Oh, we should be celebrating. We should be calling our Democrat friends to make sure they're okay today. You should be having a barbecue in the backyard with all of your Trumper friends and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was just, let's, we just won the Super Bowl and the World Series all together, right? Hey, Connie, the 4 years of chaos is what I'm prepping you for, right? Connie's little corner, love that. Increased crime, moral bankruptcy, and destruction. We got to know who we are when we go into this. Because if we bring knives to a gun battle, we're going to lose. If we bring guns to any fight, they're going to say, you're the one with the gun. Don't you get it yet? The juxtaposition is actually what their strength is. I'm telling you how to outsmart this stuff, is to have a high emotional IQ. That's it. That is literally the weapon that they haven't developed. They have not developed emotional IQ. There are whole pages on the internet right now about people crying about how much they were suffering and everything else. And I provided a safe haven. I can guarantee to you some of the things that were commented on, some of the things that I said were very much like taken out of context and put on a page like that. Guarantee it. A high emotional IQ is where you are able to look at what your triggers are. You're able to understand how you got here. In other words, like what formed me. In other words, like my mother might not have been the best mom, but she still provided for me and I got this out of that. I learned how to cook when I was young because my mom didn't want to cook after 12, for example. Right? Correct, Connie. This is something that their idol doesn't have, and he's an idol. Right? So when you build your emotional intelligence, when you build your emotional IQ, what you're doing is you're saying, I did that wrong. I'm not really sure how to do that yet. Fake it till you make it it's a fine line between saying, I'm going to give this a try, but I'm going to learn from it. Every single thing that I do, I went back and I watched the video, and the first thing I said was, I got to stop the stupid skip thing that keeps happening. And I freeze for a second. How appropriate does that look? Sorry, I hope you guys found that funny. And at first, I didn't know if it was on my end, if it was being broadcasted. It seems like it's being broadcasted. And I'm really realizing that I have to do like an upgrade, and I'll do it. Don't worry. Now I'm like, so because I was able to be critical about it and not just say, oh, wow, something like 25,000 of you have seen, it's gotten 25,000 views. And again, thank you. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you for going to my website, signing up for a free class that I have tonight. You'll get on my email list. You'll find out all sorts of fun stuff that I'm doing. I'm about to announce, I'm going to be doing some online circles where I'm doing direct messages, that sort of thing. And by the way, I'm not here. You're seeing a lot of mediums sit there and go like, I'm predicting this and I'm seeing this and let's all kind of, kumbaya and all that stuff. You're seeing tarot readers turn over cards and that sort of thing. I have all those tools in my bag. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. My weakness is dowsing. And I partnered with a really great dowser that I'm going to be offering something through this channel. She's certified. She works with the American Dowsing Association. Crystals is not my favorite, which is why I have that partnership. Being a good proofreader, even though some of you that have read my book, funny you should say that, know that it got a lot of cleanup through my editor. Daryl does a great job running, the self-book publishing company that I'm connected to, that I work with, that I own, that we own. And I've got a lot of tools in the toolkit. And Trump's election actually wholesale, every single part of Project 2025 takes a shot at what I do. Literally. You don't think that some sort of religious bound organization or conversation is coming my way? I'm an adoptive foster parent. You know what they think of adoption? What do you think they're going to do with all of those abortions that can't happen? They want to adopt it into white nationalist families. They want to use adoption as a tool of expansion. That's why Amy Coney Barrett is on the Supreme Court. Oh, and those shivers that just went down your spine were real. Forget about Handmaid's Tale. They don't want it to be a brokered thing. They want it to be nothing short of you can't really supply this. And by the way, how do you do that? You make it so damn near impossible for for somebody that is in a socioeconomic class that cannot afford children, that relies on social payment, that relies on some of these entitlement programs, raise the bar so they don't qualify for it anymore. And then they literally turn around and go, I'm going to be in poverty when I have this child. And now I don't have this option anymore. So I'm going to have to birth a child and put it into and give it up for adoption because I can't. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, that's okay. We'll take your little baby off your hands. We have a great family in Oklahoma that'll raise it under the Lord Jesus Christ. That's why Project 2025 is scary. But if you say that to somebody who's a Trumper, they're like, that's not real. That's not real. Yeah, it's known as eugenics. And by the way, before you start to think that other countries around the world haven't tried this, I'm going to use this as an example. By the way, part of emotional IQ is being curious about everything. I started doing readings. I have a story in the book. It should be terrifying. We need a domestic supply of white babies. Wow, that was real. So those of you that don't know, I'm a certified medium. I've done over 25,000 readings. I'm well connected. If you want to set up a reading, just go to my website. You'll see Book with Brandon and that sort of thing. I appreciate it. Again, I'm not doing this as a fun drive. I'm doing this because I have to get this out because I think that this overarching thing that I'm talking about is fantastic. I still got to stay in business, right? So I noticed a trend of people that I was meeting, and I'm in upstate New York, and I noticed a serious trend of people that were actually they were adopted, and they had no idea because they were adopted off of the coast of Nova Scotia, where the Inuit tribe thrived in the early 1900s. Well, throughout the century, what they were, they took away their whaling, they took away a lot of things from them, including their children, because they would come in and say, you are below a poverty line and you can't do this. You can't raise children. And I have watched the, child safety protection agencies, CPSs, go rickshaw on families. And even in my own situation, I was working with the biological family to help them build their tools. I kept seeing caseworkers fail for them. And they would get frustrated with the caseworker. And then the caseworker would be like, whoa, 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 you're being offensive. This is going in your record. When realizing that they were actually really upset. We also had a judge that had such a high threshold for parental termination that it was nuts. Like, it was nuts. Like, they were in our custody for 5.5 years before they moved on an adoption, and it was because of a judge change. But that's besides the point. One of the things that I recognized, and in my soul, I realized that I needed to work with the biological parents so that then they would find peace through this, and I would find peace with this as well. Because I didn't want to come into fatherhood thinking that it was a stolen situation. I didn't want to steal the election. I wanted to be free and fair. So I actually worked with the biological parents. I would go to them on these things. I'd be like, hey, listen, this is what Xander appreciates. This is how Xander eats. Let's cut to the message and be like, hey, there you go. I'm going to give you guys some time alone, but why don't you work on that? And I would literally go back to the caseworker and say, you know what? She actually picked up on that. Because, like it or not, if they were going to do a reunification, I wanted what was best for the child. I had to put aside my own emotions. I am battle tested for working on my emotional IQ. Because there's nothing harder than falling in love with a child that you're taking care of and simultaneously helping the biological parent that in the end didn't have the tools. Forget about the resources. The resources could have come in. It was the tools. She was a bipolar schizophrenic. She had mental health issues and she never really addressed them. And that is why the judge eventually kind of said, no, this is the safety of the child. It wasn't Brandon is a better dad. It wasn't because the system had run out of options for them. It wasn't, the timeline was blown out. They got an additional 4 years. At the time of the adoption, it was like the fifth longest adoption case in the history of New York State. And the biological, the biological parents had like 14 lawyers because they kept firing their lawyers as a stall tactic. The kid's law guardian, where it's just like, this is just ridiculous. This is what they do. Well, they have rights. They need to be able to kind of see this. And it wasn't until I stood up in court, which, by the way, I'm invited, but I'm not welcome. Adoptive parents are like, what are you doing here? You're just a resource. I'm going to raise this kid for you. That's literally how they look at you. And they play skullduggery games. They're like, well, we've got another kid coming. Are you going to take him in? And you're like, well, I have to really think about it. Well, let us know, because we'll take all the kids because everybody wants a baby. I'm sorry, what? We just said we're going to take a couple of minutes to talk it over and think about the strategy. They didn't give a shit. They just wanted to drop the kid off, right? So there is a ton of problems with CPS. There is a ton of there is no checks and balances in that process. None. And if you've ever been through it, as a parent, as a foster parent, as a whatever, I'm here to tell you, you walk out of it and go, no way. No way. By the way, see also another system that just needs resources. And not even, and then what you get is it burns out everybody in it. And you end up with a caseworker that just got their sociology degree. And now they're working as a counselor. And I'm not talking down to this, but they don't cultivate any experience. By the time they're 24, they're burned out, and they talk about how they're borderline alcoholics. That's, and again, I know that's not fair, but I'm telling you, I met my fair share of them. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is the country of Canada basically brokered an adoption program in the 50s and 60s to basically gut the tribes along the Nova Scotia plain. And what did they do? They peppered them all over New York State, the Northeast, Maine, and then they literally sent them with no paperwork. So they don't have any heritage or lineage. Do you think they can heal? Do you think healing's easy for them? Hey, what time were you born? I don't know. They won't give me a birth certificate. You can't even do their astrology. So I can tell you that the eugenics part of this should scare the living bejesus out of you. And that's the stuff that I genuinely think the vast majority of Trump supporters and voters had no idea. You're going to hear this on the regular. I had no idea. I thought there was no way. Look at me. Look at me. They're going to say I had no idea. So here's a couple of tools, right? Yeah, Janice, it's another form of it, isn't it? Ugh. And listen, we're all mixing DNA now. We've been doing it for centuries. Like, this isn't new. There is nothing new about, the mixed modality of the genetic self, right? But in the scheme of things, yeah, Janet, I see what you're saying. It happened from the 50s to the early 70s. Yes, Janet, thank you for the correction on that. I wasn't quite sure. I knew it was the 50s and 60s for sure. But the people that I was meeting and I'm connecting with it, I'm telling them about their grandparents. I'm like, yeah, I go, she's showing me, things that were attached to, their, archetype and their tribe, so to speak. And she's like, oh, I figured I was Indian, but I didn't know that. Oh, and that was another thing. What they also knew is that if you were half or less, which makes no sense, then you were guaranteed to be shipped off. If you were whole, that was the deal they had to make with the Canadian government. So you needed one parent that was whole and one parent that was half or better, or two halves at a minimum, and that wasn't happening either. It's just it's awful. It's flat out awful. And to see that there are remnants of that in this, like, we got our work cut out for us, but we still got to make a living, right? We still got to live within our passion. We still have to live within our calling. So when you're confronted with people that have this ginormous rift in their stuff, know that from an archetypal standpoint, they have a shutoff valve, which means that you're going to have to break through that shutoff valve to get them to understand and look at themselves as a whole person, because they compartmentalize it. Oh, I don't like that stuff. Hey, they tell you how much of a great guy they are, and then they're addicted to some, channel they shouldn't be addicted to. Or they, are so, they work so much that they never go home. And it's apparent to you, like, hey, you are avoiding the conversations because you work too much, right? You're in a position where any of the dialogue that they're going to have with themselves is just going to be a reiteration of, like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Trump's in the country now. It's great. The economy's going to get better. My wallet's going to get fatter. Look at the stock market today. By the way, the stock market has been up every single day after a presidential election since I think it was 1980. And the reason why that dipped, 1980, it did go up as well. It was Carter. So it was 76. That was the only one that actually dropped. And it dropped like four whatever, like 4 points or whatever, which is significant. I'm not saying it's not, but okay. So, hey, America, you're richer now. By the way, look at your own 401k. Woohoo! Doesn't matter if the butter goes up. You got more money anyways. Wait for them to exploit that. Right? The human stock market. I like that. Well, actually, when it says, listen, you say the stock market is for the rich. No. It is for people that feel that they are, quote, smart with their money. That they are somehow in a perpetuated situation where if they're just smart with it, that their savings account is part of the reason why the economy is so out of whack is because there is a literal equation for savings versus, income, right? And we've been so out of whack with that for a while because we put it into the stock market. We put it into Bitcoin. We put it into things that can't even be substantiated by the old models. And I'm not saying we can't progress. Thank you very much, Uranus. But on the other side of this, we have to start to recognize that this isn't It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Bitcoin can be manipulated in a heartbeat, right? The stock market gets manipulated in a heartbeat. The dollar gets manipulated by printing too much money, which, by the way, is the Republican trouble with this. Going, we print too much money. We make it soft. You know what they've been doing? Collecting money and then turning it around. So anyways, I was mentioning the Republican mouthpiece. And this Republican mouthpiece was talking all about the idea that we should be celebrating and, watching their tears, check on a Democrat friend, all that shit. And then they literally sat there and said, I am so happy that communism is dead in this country. Literally, you could hear him seething. I'm proud communism is dead in this country. And then he went on to say, it is our obligation to take care of those that have fallen loved ones. That's why I'm asking you to donate to this XYZ fund that takes care of the widows and the family of those of fallen soldiers, firemen, and policemen. Now, listen, that's a very noble cause. But he was wrapping up his hate speech on communism and socialism by begging for money for a cause. I have 3 adopted sons, and I have another. I call him my son, but he didn't want to be adopted. He got in late in the game, 16, and we just care about him. He's there at the holidays. He's a safe haven. He's got some struggles, and there's a lot of boundaries that you'll learn with that. But he came to me and he says, we went to go see Skyfall. He and I went to the movies, and we go to the movies, and he, if you've ever seen the movie Skyfall, it's the James Bond thing. And he's like, dude, I'm all about this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm going to say his name because I've said it before. His name is Martin. And when he came to us, the Trayvon Martin thing had happened. And Martin looked like Trayvon Martin. I mean, it's like when he put a hood on, my Martin looked like Trayvon Martin. And he wanted to go see the Bond film. I'm like, cool, let's go. And we go, and we're at a later, showing, and we're hitting a diner. We're hitting an all night. This is when all night diners still existed, because they're closed now because of post-COVID. They realized they weren't making money during that time, whatever. And we're sitting there reading, and I said, so what'd you think about that movie? He said, and he was quiet. He was jazz going into it. And at the end, he was like, yeah, blow him up. Take out the house and blah, 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 all that other stuff. And Skyfall was the place where he grew up. And it was the house that he had abandoned, or it abandoned him. And he's going through all of this. He's basically working through his root, right? And if you watch the Bond films, he's actually working through different parts of his chakra system, right? GoldenEye is about his third eye, right? The Octopussy is about his sacral. Anyways, but Skyfall is about his root, which is Skyfall down to his root. He would eventually have to face it. There's so much symbolism in it, right? He was a little quiet coming out of it. And I said, so what was your takeaway on that? He said, at one point, M looked at him and said, we always go after the ones that lose their parents. They always make the best agents. And I'll share a story. His mother abandoned him. His father was only a block and a half away or 2 towns over, but he wanted nothing to do with anybody. And his mother got an offer, so she packed up the house and left while he was at school. So going to school every day was a trigger for him for the rest of his life, because he came home to an abandoned home. Go back and watch Skyfall. The house is abandoned. It was a trigger. And when she said, we target the ones that lose their parents because they make the best agents. Bomb diggity. He just sat there and was like, yeah. And then I'm like, well, it's great that you're sharing that with me. I noticed that too. And he goes, yeah, I'm getting fries with gravy. And I'm like, make it a double. But he was able to raise his emotional IQ because he went through something. He realized it. He realized they were talking to him. Right? So as you go through this and you're working with Trumpers and you're working with people that for some reason want to elevate this, know that their shutoff valve doesn't let them heal. Know that their shutoff valve brings them to a point of anger and action, and they think that's American. They think we're in a John Wayne film. And you know which one they didn't watch of John Wayne? Was The Quiet Man. They will watch every single John Wayne film and associate to them. And then they won't watch The Quiet Man. And in The Quiet Man, you actually watch John Wayne as a lead character grow. It's the only one. It's actually the one job he did as acting. Everything else, he was just a tough guy. Well, how you feel about that, Pilgrim? Catchphrases and yippee-ki-yays later on, right? So know that their shutoff valve doesn't let them go to a place of healing. Know that shutoff valve isn't going to allow them to expect that there's going to be gaps between you being human and the spiritual connection that you're providing. They're going to turn around and say to you, well, why didn't you get that right? I shared this story a little bit. I had this great sold out show, community theater, helped them out, raised money for them. They're putting in new walls and ceilings and all that other good stuff. And this guy thought that he was entitled because he, bought one of the tables and basically bitched me out afterwards and said, oh, you missed this, you missed that, you missed whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then I posted, hey, listen, I can't vote for somebody that is going to actively hate my kids in my situation and what I do. Right? Just a blanket statement. I'm just letting you know that's where I stand in all of this. And I also learned that it wasn't my role to shit shame him. Like, okay, I'm going to meet you where you're at. And then in that post, he literally says, no wonder why you couldn't read me. You believe in all those lies. These are the things. Pilgrim is a great word. The Pilgrim sandwich, quite frankly, should be the national sandwich, but that's just me. By the way, I have a recipe for you. Follow me for recipes because I will start coming out with the cooking stuff. Don't you worry. See, I do this thing where I crisp them. I'm not going to. It's a whole other show. But I'm just telling you when you get the stuffing to be crunchy again. Anyways, so we're going to bring this home. When you're dealing and working with people that are going to have this, and it's going to happen for you. It is absolutely going to happen for you. You're a light worker. I don't care if you're a light worker because you're an HR director. I don't care if you're a light worker because you're an accounts payable. I don't care if you're a customer service person. If I resonate with you, you do light work on whatever level it is that you're doing and what you're ready for. I'm meeting you where you're at. When these things happen, you have to completely disengage. Completely disengage. You don't have to give them an explanation because they want the fight. Well, you can't even pick up for yourself. You can't even stand up for yourself. No, I am standing up for myself. The sooner we begin to realize that this election wasn't about borders, it's actually about boundaries. It's not about borders, it's about boundaries. They talked about the borders, but here's the boundary. Nope, not going to talk to you about this anymore. Like, what kind of crappy energy would a person present to me to say, like, well, you believe in, I had no idea. And by the way, it was never a topic of conversation. I purposely put out a series of posts that I knew people were going to object to. I knew that was not, I knew that it was not going to be a quote unquote business move. I knew that it wasn't going to be something that would be kumbaya. And Ellie Cordova is a great musician, and she had this. She makes little ditties. She's a great musician, but she's just creative. I just love her creative energy. And she had this little kind of like, song about how she's a tree and she gets chopped down and she becomes a ballot and she doesn't want to be on the ground. She wants to be used. And it's a nice little story about being counted as a vote. And then at the end, she just kind of tongue in cheek, like says it really quick. And, please don't vote for the orange guy because he's just going to suppress me and cut down all my trees and make sure that nobody's on the planet in about 25 years. Like she just kind of like does that, like at the end, kind of tongue in cheek. And I sent it to a bunch of people and people that I've known. And one of them wrote back, hey, listen, I need you to respect my boundary here because I have a different point of view than you do. I said, okay, I understand that. And I simply reminded her that when she would send me a text because she was missing her grandmother, and when she was going through a relationship challenge, or when she was having a challenge with one of her kids who's gifted, I said, please remember that when you're texting me in the middle of the night and I didn't charge you. And then I disengaged. Part of the emotional IQ is having a strategy before you get into it. Having emotional IQ means that you face some of these things that you need to, and then go there. I'm telling you that when they start to unfold the turpitude that has gone on, I hope it unfolds with enough time for us to be able to do something. I expected Kamala to kind of say, I'm going to concede this with the asterisks of we need to make sure that what we see is real. Like if she just said that. And Joe Biden, whatever, I get it. You got to keep the calm. You're the president. You're on your way out the door, and he sounded a little bitter, to be honest with you, which also makes me wonder if this isn't just Hillary 2.0. Like, oh, we're going to switch this out. We're going to get rid of the old guy. Bernie, thanks for the street cred, but we got it from here, baby. Hey, Biden, thanks for showing up, but ice cream. Like, listen, I get it. I understand it. But they didn't do it in a kind way. Let's be brutally honest. Let's actually start to be honest with ourselves. The Democratic Party was mean to itself. The Republican Party looked at it and said, hold my Bud Light. We can do it worse than you do. Back on the election fraud, we're going to need somebody to step up. Yeah, and you know what, Deb? I see you there. I wish he had done it differently. I wish that they had realized that going on a podcast, she was worried that they were just going to make fun of her. But that's the bully mentality. That's part of the thing that we all kind of appreciated about Kamala. Oh, you're a bully? Go fuck yourself. Come on, right here. Come up to the podium. Come up to the plaintiff desk. Come up to the defendant desk, rather. Come on. Come up to the defendant desk. Like, we wanted that from her. We wanted the same kind of fight. And we wanted her fight to meet their arrogance. And she did until she lost. Just being honest. She was like, I'm the prosecutor and he's the convicted felon. Right? Yeah. So be a damn prosecutor now. We wanted Kamala Harris, the warrior. And instead we're getting the Merrick Garland style justice system all of a sudden. Right? There's too many coincidences to not ask questions, Kamala and Joe and Liz Cheney. Wouldn't it be amazing if Liz Cheney opened the investigations? Talk about a bullseye. And by the way, they have to keep them until the governors, they have to keep all the ballots in whatever. And by the way, when you open up the poll results, you will still find that they are still coming in. But you'll see like 20 and 50, 100 here and there and that sort of thing. It's just the batches in which they put them in. But if we do the math of all of the people that were polled, and we do the math of all of the surges of part of the reason why everybody thought that Kamala had this in the bag was 100% the Taylor Swift effect. She just added that many more people in there under her endorsement. It is a logical truism to say she just, I don't even know the numbers. I'm going to do my own research here on this. And whatever numbers it is, I know that she got something like 800,000 voters to sign up in 1 hour or something like that. 700,000. It's something. It's under 1 million, but it was a lot. And then you're like, well, that's another million, give or take. Even if it's 500,000. And 200,000 of those were going to vote for Trump because they're just like, yeah, you know what? I haven't voted yet. Thanks for reminding me, Taylor. I'm voting against you. That's part of the system. We get it. But for it to be this far off and we're not asking those questions, they don't want you to think. They know how to trigger your quit. That's what they're doing right now. Trigger their quit. That is their mantra. Just make it so overwhelming that they quit. I'm going to be a medium for a second. And I'm going to tell you what they showed me, and then I'm going to let you guys go so you can be the best. The math isn't mathing, exactly. And I hope a lot of you guys sign up for the Signs from a Loved One class tonight. Sorry, I had to put a little elbow rub on there. Got a little tennis elbow, even though I haven't played tennis in a decade. Signs from Loved Ones, go to the website, tbrandonruss.com. And you're going to enjoy it. You're going to be getting a link at about 5:30 or so. But that's usually when I send it out. And I actually cut off the signups at that point. There's going to be a lot of people in the class. But what I do is I basically go through all of the steps of how to recognize signs from loved ones, the different types of signs that you might see, how you can help manifest it, and kind of go from there. And by the way, it's how you follow your intuition. It's that equation of what you know, what you feel, and what you want to be that allow you to have a good relationship with them, right? Yeah, that's kind of cool. Totally forgot what I was going to say. I should really write this stuff down. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys for being part of my journey here. I want to thank you for being part of things. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you for sending it to friends, and go there. Yeah, Deb, I'll see you there tonight. And I also do a class weekly called the Weekly Bee. I actually go live. The class is live on Mondays, but then if you can't make it to the class, you get it in your inbox within a day or so. That's something else I have to do this election day week. Totally threw me off. I got to get that out to you guys. Thanks for the reminder. All right, guys, heart taps for you guys. And thank you so much for being part of my journey. Oh my gosh. Stop freezing, will you? Thank you so much for being part of my journey. Heart taps, guys, and keep going. I'll see you soon.